the Comedy Historian Podcast with Robert Ross. Welcome to Pies Across the Pond with Robert Ross and Nick Santamaria. In today's episode, they will be discussing Carry On Screaming and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Hello, chums, and welcome to Pies Across the Pond. I am joined by Nick Santamaria, our transatlantic friend across the pond, and
how you do,
Mr. Robert Ross.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and Carry On Screaming. So Nick's going to kick us off. Tell us, let's just put it into context about Abbott and Costello, where this film started, why it came about. Go for it.
interesting time in their careers. Up to this point, they were really the biggest comedy draws in America at that time. From 1941 up until about 1944-45, where it started slipping. The formula started slipping. They tried some experimental things where they split up the team, but that didn't work either. The audience kind of stayed away from that, and they needed something. They needed something different, and it was actually producer Robert Arthur who came up with the idea of taking the now dormant Universal monsters that were such a boon to Universal Studios from 1931 up until 1945. They weren't using them at all. And they thought, hey, why not combine the two and create something completely different? Now, it's quite famous that Lou Costello hated the idea. My theory is that it sort of took away from the team, basically. It might have been an ego thing, let's face it. The monsters were stars. They were stars of their films. Bud and Lou were stars of their films. Lou would have had to share the screen with stars. So I think that was his main issue with the film, because the script was wonderful. It was quite wonderful. He changed his mind at the preview when his mother approached him and said, that's the best thing you ever did. So basically, this reignited them at the box office, and they were #1 again. So there it was, horror and comedy. It's a unmatchable combination, as you know, time and time again.
Yeah.
So that's basically
great guest stars as well in the film.
You had the guys. You had the Wolfman. You had Lon Chaney Jr. You had Bela Lugosi, who a lot of people feel is the one and only Dracula, although I do prefer Christopher Lee. Isn't that something? Lugosi will always be Dracula in my heart, but when I'm watching the movies, Christopher Lee just gets the heart pumping. He's like, whoa, that's a formidable Dracula. He puts down the top hat. You know what I mean?
He's a sexy Dracula, isn't he, Christopher Lee? I suppose he's got that. You actually believe that the female victims would lust after this guy. He looks
absolutely,
like a real rogue and a real count. But a real man. I love Bela, you see. I think Bela. Anyway,
I'm a Bela. I'm Bela and Boris. Bela and Boris. But anyway, no, Christopher Lee, you're right. He's more of a manly Dracula. He could throw you across the room, basically. But anyway, so and Glenn Strange, who played the monster, during the last go round of the monster series. So, you had a wonderful cast. You had Lenore Aubert, who was just gorgeous and so mysterious and so almost Ingrid Bergman-like. And to me, it was just it was the perfect place for them to go to reignite their careers. And I'm going to be very interested to hear what you have to say about it, Mr. Ross.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll hold that thought for a moment. Tell us about Carry On Screaming. More, I suppose, where
similar to Nick's put into context.
Yeah.
Where it fits into the Carry On. Well, it's number 12 in the Carry On series. And it comes at the peak of their popularity. Really, they've been going since 1958. Carry On Sergeant was the very first one, and in 1966 they shot Carry On Screaming in January into the start of February 66. And they just come off the back of their biggest successes. Carry On Cleo been massive success. And Carry On Cowboy had been an equally big success in terms of sort of like a filmic pastiche. So it was the scriptwriter Tolbert Rothwell's idea, because usually it was the producer Peter Rogers would always have the idea in the bath. He would have his eureka moment and say, "We'll do a Carry On about school teachers or something." But Tolbert Rothwell went to him and said he wanted to do a horror pastiche. And although as you mentioned, the Universal monsters had come to an end with House of Dracula, that's right. And with Carry On Screaming, the Hammer films were still really at their peak. So I always would have loved, talking about guest stars, I would have loved that, if Christopher Lee or Peter Cushing could have popped in for a cameo or something, but they were busy making films all the time.
Even Michael Ripper.
Even Michael Ripper, exactly, or George Woodbridge or someone. I mean, there's plenty of people that sort of cross over with Hammer. And Carry On, the Warren Mitchells of this world, and the Norman Mitchells, sort of little character actors. But Christopher Lee was making one of the Fu Manchus, Bride of Fu Manchu, I think, at the start of '66, and Peter Cushing was making the second Doctor Who film. So they were wrapped up on their own stuff. But it was a massive success. Ironically, for one that a lot of people say is the best Carry On film of all, it didn't do that well at the box office, and critically, it wasn't well received either. Some critics considered it the weakest and the sort of the poorest of the lot, which I find hard to believe now. But that was back when it was released in '66. But yeah, interesting.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is critical?
I think maybe because Sid Jones wasn't in it. And I think Sid certainly had been in the last few. He'd missed a couple, we'd missed the first 3 Carry On films, but he missed a few on the run as well into them. But he'd been in Cleo, he'd been in Cowboy. And Sid was actually still in pantomime. He was in the London Palladium pantomime at the time, with Kenneth Connor, who also wasn't in this one. And the pantomime was so successful, Babes in the Wood, it was running until June 1966.
Wow.
they were just selling out. So
Christmas in June.
Christmas in June. So Sid was in that. And I mean, not the saying they wouldn't do a film at the same time they were doing a stage work, they would do that, but it was a really quite strenuous thing. He was also making a TV show called George and the Dragon at the time with Peggy Mount. So he dropped out, and the original rumor went out that they were going to go to Tony Hancock to replace him, which would have been very interesting. Because they just worked together again after a long break in 1965, doing a couple of remakes of some of their old Hancock's half hours together, telly and radio. And then Hancock that year went on to do the detective in Brian Forbes' The Wrong Box, which is a similar sort of character to Detective Sidney Bung. But lateral thinking, Peter Rogers thought we can't get Hancock, or Hancock doesn't want to do it. They went to Harry H. Corbett, who was working with Hancock's writers, Galton and Simpson. So it was Harry H. Corbett's only Carry On. And maybe
wasn't he doing Steptoe and Son?
He just finished the first batch of Steptoe. So the black and white Steptoes, the first 4 years of Steptoe, ended in November '65, and that was going to be the end of it. Galton and Simpson writers said that's the end of it. So Harry was very free in January '66, and he wanted to. And they offered him a decent paycheck, a lot more than any other Carry On actor was getting at that time.
Really? Wow. They broke down.
They did. I mean, Sid would have been on about 5,000 around that time, and they paid Harry H. £12,000 to make it.
Twice as much.
Which is the equivalent of about £100,000 now, 120,000, which was a big budget.
Not bad for 6 weeks.
Not bad for 6 weeks.
I was going to say, especially for those films.
Yeah. Was the budget, was it quite a big leap in terms of Bud and Lou films for Frankenstein, or was it similar to what they've been doing?
No, it was a nice budget. It was up close to $1 million.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It was an A picture.
How would that compare to, say, like sort of Buck Privates Come Home and stuff? Was it more of a budget to get the monsters into it? And
yeah. This one was a bit more. But they were all close. They were, Abbott and Costello movies were a formula. They knew how much money they were going to make. They knew how much they were going to spend. You know, it was basically formulaic that way. They knew the Francis the Talking Mule movies and Mon Pa Kettle movies and all that, basically. Well, I'm sorry, Gemma. What were you going to
That's
say?
all right. I think what's interesting, and this is definitely personal to me, and I'm going to ask you about how you came across your two films first in your life. But I think for me, Abbott and Costello was my introduction to Universal monsters as a child. That's what got me into it. I'm going to be really controversial, and I know you're going to love this, Nick, but someone listening may not. But I actually, they were my first kind of duo that I saw. I didn't know Laurel and Hardy. I still don't really know them that well, as much as I know Bud and Lou. So, and then in terms of Carry On Screaming, that's my introduction to Hammer. But how did you guys, let's start with you, Nick. When was your first viewing of the film of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein?
Oh my, wow. This goes way back. I mean, I'll let me just say this. When Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein came on television when we were kids, it was tantamount to Christmas, Wizard of Oz coming on once a year. It was that kind of thing. When I would hear that it was coming on television, I would usually start jumping up and down and screaming. And and I was in college, but no, I'm kidding. But it was basically that. It was an event, and we savored it. We savored it. But think about it. You talked about how it was also the introduction to the Universal monsters. It was double indemnity. You know what I mean? We not only enjoyed our favorite comedians, but these monsters. It was the world that we all love to live in. You know, when I was a child, we had a magazine here called Famous Monsters of Filmland. Did you have it there at all?
No, I've picked up a lot in the years after. Yes, it might have come over here in specialist shops, but no, it's a legendary thing for us horror fans across the world. But yeah.
Oh, it was nirvana. It was bliss, and I would wait every Thursday of the third Thursday of every month at our local candy store for the next issue. And Robert, it was Lugosi, it was Karloff, it was Vincent Price, it was Lee, it was Cushing, it was bliss, it was heaven. So Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein introduced us to that, and that opened up a whole world. So not only comedy, but the horror as well.
We had a journalist, a writer who sadly just passed away a few weeks ago, actually, Alan Franks, who wrote a lot of heavily illustrated horror books. One just called Horror Films, which I just devoured. It was mainly pictures with a little bit of a sort of what this was, and I was just seeing these things for the first time. Like, God, I need to see this, and I need to see. But a bit like you, Jim, I think for British kids for the last sort of 50, 60 odd years on television, it's been a rusty old key to unlock that Universal vault, the Bud and Lou films particularly, because they would run them on Saturday morning TV over here. And also in terms of the Carry On Screaming, a bit like you jumping up and down because we're talking kids here, we're talking before Blu-rays and streaming and everything else. You had to wait years and years for a TV station to put them on, didn't you? You couldn't just go and rent it and see it. These things were really inaccessible. So when you saw Carry On Screaming or Carry On anything, BBC Two at 6 o'clock or something, it was a major event. I mean, there was a, and this is the baton being passed on to other comedians and comedy writers. The Legal Gentlemen guys, Mark Gatiss and Steve Pemberton and Jeremy Dyson and Reece Shearsmith, independently, the four of them all sat down one Halloween night to watch Carry On Screaming on television, and I would have watched it at the same time in late 70s, early 80s, that sort of time. And that they have gone on to create this whole sort of universe, for want of a better phrase, of horror comedy, pretty much in celebration of Carry On Screaming and its ilk. But I think the important thing with Bud and Lou is, as you mentioned earlier, they really treat the horror actors with huge respect, don't they? I know Lon Chaney Jr. went on record as saying that Bud and Lou killed the horror movie, which I read your article in the book, your chapter in the book about it, and I agree with you. They really didn't at all.
At all.
No, not at all. No, because there's no jokes around it apart from the one you do mention about he won't hurt you, the Lugosi, which is quite sweet.
It is a sweet joke.
It's Dracula treating the monster like a child, really.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the blueprint, that film, Bud and Lou Meet Frankenstein, for all the other sort of monster compendiums that came, be it the Monster Squad or be it Van Helsing or whatever. It's always the Count that seems to be the leader, isn't it?
Yes.
He's one that he's the head monster, really. Yeah.
The head monster.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, he's the one with the brain. He's
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
so to speak.
Yes.
Nick, one of the first sort of comedy horror films, because I'm just thinking of dates, because obviously Carry On Screaming, we're looking at 20 plus years later.
18, only 18.
18, sorry.
No, go on. There were quite a few before that, but
yeah. Well, you think about it. Most comedy before that has been, horror comedies are basically old dark house comedies where it's gangsters or some people have a reason for getting the people out of the house, or there's a gorilla, or some human or animal reason for them to be afraid. Very seldom were they monsters, So Abbott and Costello sort of opened up that entire world, including The Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Mummy. I mean, all of those films, for better or worse, opened up that whole world for comedy for the Carry On crew to make Carry On Screaming.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and you had the Bob Hope, but as you say, there's a real ghost in the Ghost Breakers, but it is usually gangsters, or there's a hidden treasure in the house, and they want to get Bob and Paulette Goddard out of their place and all that sort of thing. There's always a human factor in there somewhere.
Exactly.
My question to you then, Rob, is where does this sit? Where does Carry On Screaming sit in terms of British movies doing comedy horror? Because there are other comedy horrors, and we celebrate it now, but as you mentioned, it wasn't that loved.
There hadn't been that many pastiches as such. I mean, they're just at the end of the Second World War, 1945, Noel Coward's Blythe Spirit, which takes death as a joke in a way, but it's not really a horror film as such. It's a sophisticated comedy of domestic manners, really, but it's got ghosts in it.
Right, it's got that otherworldly thing.
But it's sort of set in a wonderful sort of mystical sort of English countryside sort of thing. But actually sending up, I mean, we'd had the Ghosts of St. Michael's, which was the Will Hay film, which ironically Charles Hawtrey was in 25 years earlier than Carry On Screaming. He's barely in Carry On Screaming, I know, but he leaves a fantastic sort of mark in that film. But again, that was fifth columnists and Nazis, and there wasn't a real horror element in there in the Will Hay film. But the thing with the Carry Ons is that unlike Bud and Lou, who were playing, although they're Wilbur and Chuck, they're Bud and Lou, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
But in everything they do, whereas the Carry On team, they were a bunch of actors that happened to work together on a regular basis, be it in the Carry Ons, be it on radio shows or stage shows or whatever. And I think it's unlike Bud and Lou, they couldn't say if they didn't want to do it, they'd be recast.
Right.
they
Who's available?
Yeah, they could, and they indeed did make a carry on films without Kenneth Williams or Joan Sims or whoever. So if Kenneth Williams had turned around and said, I'm not doing a comedy horror film, they would have bet your bottom dollar cast Frankie Howard or somebody,
Oh yeah.
So
what's interesting, I think, is that I could see Bud and Lou in the role of Sergeant Bung and
Slowbottom
Slowbottom.
Peter Butterworth's
Right. Well, let me just say by way of introduction that I'm not. When I came into this, I had only seen, I think, two Carry On films. One was the Rumpo Kid, was Carry On Cowboy.
Yeah.
And I actually saw Carry On Screaming about 25 years ago and did not remember much about it because it was really, I saw it on the fly, it was sort of like, I saw it once. Anyway, So here are my observations. I found it very interesting that the facade of Pinewood Studios looks a bit like Chaplin Studios in Hollywood. That English Tudor. It's really charming.
Mm.
And I was going to say that the the song I just fell in love with. That the fact that the scream was a percussive instrument
Yeah, yeah.
in the song just totally killed me, so to
What
speak.
gets me sometimes, there's I think it's Kenneth Williams and Harriet Corbett. You can hardly read their name because it's on the screen, isn't it? It's like they're so juddery.
So similarities between Abbott and Costello and the thing. Carry On Sergeant sounds like Buck Private.
Mm. We were having this
Basically.
conversation the other night. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
You
There
know?
are parallels. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, same kind of thing. Um, let's see, Bob Monkhouse. I have to see that one because I'm a Monkhouse fan, and I'd really like to see that one. Um, I'm just going through the cast and the fact that he cut the films in the camera like John Ford. John Ford did the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's a similarity.
Yeah. Well, Gerald Thomas was an editor. Yeah. So I mean, and talking about Carry On Sergeant, I mean, I get looks when we do our Carry On show now, but the older I get, the more I think Carry On Sergeant is probably the best one of all.
I agree.
It's
really,
it's so it's such, you can understand why they made a second one. Basically, it's so there's not an ounce of fat on it. It's so well made and it's so
sounds
good.
like one I would like.
And when you compare it to other British comedy films of that period, the sort of mid to late 50s, it's so much slicker and ruder, and you can understand why the audience thought, my God, this is great. You know,
Yeah.
It was number 3 box office hit for 1958, behind The Choir and Dunkirk. So it's a lovely. I love it. And it's the only one that Bob Monkhouse did, the only one that William Hartnell did, but yeah, it's definitely a Carry On film straight away.
I have to check it out. Okay, so I think that the film suffers without Sid James. I mean, Harry Corbett is fine, just a little too over the top for me at times. Sometimes his eyes look like they were going to fall out of his head. You know, I mean, but I'll tell you the truth. Again, going back to influences that I noticed from the people I know from British film, I'm a big Will Hay fan. And the Sergeant and Slow Bottom,
yeah,
and Jim Dale reminded me of Will Hay, Graham Moffat, and Moore Marriott.
Yeah,
very reminiscent.
Yeah, yeah,
and it was welcome. It was a very welcome thing. You know, they worked very well together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Well, the writer Torrot Rothwell had not worked with Will Hay, but he'd worked with a lot of the greats of that era, like Arthur Askey and the Crazy Gang and those sort of people. So he knew his onions in terms of that sort of comedy tradition. And you see that in all the carry-ons. There's loads of references to not just past comedy, but just past films. He was a real film buff, the writer, Torrot Rothwell. And also Gerald Thomas, who made them all, was a real filmite, cinephile. So yeah, it's interesting that, yeah.
Well, and you can see it in this film.
A little bit of Bud and Lou in there as well, about, you know, hereabouts, thereabouts.
Dr. Watt.
Police officers, all layabouts, Dr. Watt, exactly, and all that. Doctor Who, he was my uncle or was, and all that business. Yeah, exactly.
And what about, where is it? Full foul feet smell something horrible.
Yeah.
Now that took me completely by surprise. First of all, also the film looks like a Hammer film. So kudos to them. Seriously, you look up and you think you're watching a Hammer film. Before I forget, Slow Bottom also reminded me of Rob Wilton. So amazing. Also, when they were walking around the outdoors, you heard the hardwood floor under the grass.
Oh, that's probably your Blu-ray copy being sort of, you know. There's a problem watching things on too much high definition, isn't it? You can hear all the
you see the wigs, you know, you see all the things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two stolen gags. Bob Hope's Bob. Yeah, no, there were more. These are the only ones I'm bringing up. Okay. Kissing when Valeria kisses the monster and his shoes go up. Yeah. Bob Hope from Road to Morocco.
Yeah.
And there was something else. Where was it that I was going to mention? You know what? It really doesn't matter. Dan, the gardening man.
Mhm.
Now, this fascinated me because they only brought up the fact that his name was Dan to get that Dan, the gardening man line in. Why? It's not funny. It rhymes.
Also because Dan is the laboratory man, because Dan is one of many euphemisms for what you produce in a bathroom.
Oh, okay.
So
See,
when there's that line
I'm
says,
so American.
no, of course, because the jokes are some of them are so sort of the time, or so English. So you've got like Phil Silvers, who came in to do one a couple of years later or a year later.
I'll follow that camel.
Yeah, he got it all. He understood British humor because he was a real Anglophile. But no, there's some of the jokes that are really one of my favorite sort of jokes that no one ever gets now, or references, is Sergeant Bung, because there was a TV.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Well, there was Sergeant Bung. The only he's called Sidney Bung because, as you say, it was written for Sid James, so he's Sidney.
Right.
But Sergeant Bung, there was a very popular television show in England at the time, early '60s through to the mid '60s, called Sergeant Cork, which was a Victorian crime detective thing. And Cork is a bung, right? So Sergeant Bung is just a pastiche of Sergeant Cork. There's like
Wait, when you say cork is a bum,
well,
We say bung it in.
a cork in a bottle is sometimes called
okay.
a bung. So it's you bung it in, yeah, but it's a bung to stop things from coming out. So
okay, that's a word we're not familiar.
Yeah, so bung is just
I'm
another
not
word.
either.
Bung is just another word for cork. So
Okay.
so when audiences sat and watched that in 1966, they would get the cork bung connection,
Right.
Right.
which is lost in the mist of time now. That joke.
I don't get
so
that.
So there you go. So
It's a funny sound.
No, is that what is that?
Yeah.
Bung 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 and all that business.
Right.
Yes.
Let's just go to Robert and your views on Bud and Lou Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your sort of, what do you see? Do you see the similarities between the two films, first of
And
all?
carry on. I mean, the thing I love about Bud and Lou Meet Frankenstein is because unlike the Universal films, it's pastiching. It's a contemporary film, isn't it? It's so what I really love about it, it's not some sort of hokey pseudo-European castle in Transylvania on the Batlock at Universal. It's proper America in 1948. And the monsters are just dropped into that scenario without, as I say, with that small little gag with Lugosi and Glenn Strange, but that's a cute gag. I think the rest of it, they're genuine threats, and I think Bud is superb in it, because Bud is that typical wisecracking, sharp suited 1948 American who hasn't got time for this nonsense of monsters and fairy tales and all that rubbish. He's I always see Bud as almost the audience of 1948 looking back on those, even 3 or 4 years earlier, of those films, thinking, oh, that's that old rubbish, that's we've moved on since then. They've got out of a war since the tail end of those Universal horrors, and it's a new America now of sort of appliances and all that, whereas Lou is the kid in us who's still from the dark and
Right.
believes in monsters. And I think that's the secret of it. That's why it works so well, I think.
I also, if I can interrupt for 1 second,
Yeah.
I also love that it's Bud that has to make the change in this film. He's the one that goes through the arc, the change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I find interesting.
No. It's really, really lovely bit of acting, actually. I mean, you make the point in the book a lot, and I agree with you totally. He's so if they're underrated as a team, then Bud is so underrated as a screen actor. He's really good in Frankenstein. He as you say, he generally has a journey to go through there. No, I think it's. I know it won your book's poll as number one film. I think it was my second choice. I think I put Hold That Ghost top, but that's a personal choice. No, it's just I think it's a flawless film. I suppose the elephant in the room is because over here we always claim that Carry On Screaming is the finest comedy spoof, a horror spoof.
I think what's interesting as well is how Bud and Lou meet, or Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Did it did well here, I'm guessing, because
well
in fact I knew about it as a kid.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm sure Carry On translates as well, Carry On Screaming over to the States.
Well, it didn't. They don't know those films here. Carry On films are they show them. They would show them occasionally here, but usually at 3 a.m. on a local station. A bad print, commercials every 5 seconds. So they never got a fair shake here.
Alan Hume, who was the director of photography on that, and you mentioned it looks like a Hammer film, and it does, because he did work.
Oh, it's lovely.
He just come off about 18 months earlier a film called The Kiss of the Vampire. So Alan Hume had lit a proper Hammer film before he made Carry On Screaming. He just made for Amicus as well, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. And he told me that the thing about horror and comedy in this country, first of all, they cast it really well, because obviously we had the West End Theatre, so people could pop in for a cameo 1 or 2 days, like Charles Hawtrey did 2 days on that particular film, Screaming.
Right.
So he was
very funny, by the way.
Brilliant.
He was very funny.
But even the smallest performances are really well acted by really good actors. And secondly, he said that, doing the Amicus film, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee never sent up the horror, and he said on the Carry On, you never got Kenneth Williams. So this is garbage or whatever. They took it so seriously and really played those horrific laughs genuinely. And I mean, when I watched it when I was a kid, being genuinely frightened of Carry On Screaming.
No, I don't blame you.
In Abbott and Costello, I feel that I remember as a kid getting really frightened of Frankenstein, of the monster. I found that really creepy.
How about when Lou goes into the Wolfman's room and steals the orange?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
With the fruit.
That used to petrify me when I was a child.
Yeah. Because again, because Lon doesn't play it for laughs, does he? It's completely, the Wolfman was his baby, and he played it perfectly. But so did the scriptwriters. The scriptwriters could have mugged that part up.
Sure.
And Lon hadn't made a film for a while. He was doing theatre, wasn't he? I mean, none of them had made. I mean, I think Baylor had not made a film since Scared to Death a couple of years before.
Yeah. He was.
Glenn was popping in, and he was on Monogram sort of Poverty Row stuff, wasn't he, at that point?
Doing cowboy films.
Doing cowboy films. So he'd done The Monster twice 3 or 4 years earlier. So I mean, but they weren't at the top of their game in terms of career, but they were working actors. So I imagine Lon would have said yes, even if they had made him send up the Wolfman. But he might have had integrity. I don't know. But
well, interestingly, maybe we could talk about this, because you come at this both from 2 different worlds, if you like. You've got your historian hat on here, and I know Nick, you have as well. But you also bring the performance in as being an actor. I mean, how do the scripts, I'll start with you, how does the script of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein stand up for you as a historian?
Oh gosh, well, as a comedy film, it's a brilliant film. I mean, but like I say, in terms of knowledge of the form those 2 guys were aping, and writing to the strengths of those 2 star comedians. But like I mentioned before, it was an Abbott Costello film, whereas Carry On could have been cast with anybody. There was always a list of 10, 12 actors that they would go to, first choices.
Right.
But, they lost Sid James, so they brought Harry H in. Charles Hawtrey almost didn't do it, because there was an actor called Sidney Bromley who'd been in the previous Carry On Cowboy as the rancher, Sam Houston, the big bushy bearded guy. And Sidney Bromley pops up in some horror films at the time, like Night of the Big Heat, and he's also one of the hobos, one of the tramps that the Wolfman kills in American Werewolf in London, John Land, which ties in with your book as well. Right. So it's all a web, isn't it, of things? So all those actors, and so the Carry On guys were just a bunch of actors that were given the line.
Big ensemble.
A big ensemble, exactly. But I mean, but both scripts are really brilliant, and and I say not done at. There's not an ounce of malice in either of them. They're done with such care and love and affection, and that's why they
Right.
last. I think that's why all these films, you know, particularly the Bud and Lou's and the Carry-Ons across the pond here, they're franchises that really do still live and breathe and gain new fans every year. I mean, they do.
Going back to you then, the performance side as a performer, looking at these two films, what who would you play?
Who would I play?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Of course, I'd play Wilbur, of course.
You see, that's a perfect example of that exchange though, because Lon plays it. You don't understand. Every night I turn into a wall. He plays it so beautifully, doesn't he, Lon?
Absolutely straight.
There's not a crack of a glint of a sparkle in his eye or anything. He's not mugging it at all. And
if there was, he would have blown it. He would have blown it.
Killed the guy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But as far as, let's talk about Carry On. I am totally captivated with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams to me is so brilliant, so funny. I wrote here, in fact, it's highlighted here. He gets away with murder. He takes lines that would die in another person's mouth, coming out of another person's mouth, and he makes everything work. He's just incredible. His delivery. Well, first of all, I love him on Hancock. I love just watching him being interviewed. Well, I love him. Charles Hawtrey is a riot, but in smaller doses than Kenneth Williams, if you know what I mean. Sid he's just a treasure. That laugh he does is just so filthy. It's just wonderful. I love that. As a Gemma, as a performer, it's very easy for me, especially when I watch live television from like the 50s or the 60s. It's very easy for me to see in their eyes what they're thinking. You know, whether they're connecting or not and all that stuff. It's very easy. And I see what you mean about that with the Carry On films as well. There was something I was going to mention. At the very end of the film, Kenneth Williams is thrown into his own House of Wax type vat of whatever it is.
Yes.
And he says, I'm frying tonight.
Frying tonight.
What does that mean? I was so ready to laugh, and I went, huh?
It's so funny because that is such an iconic phrase here.
We got T-shirts with "Frying Tonight" on it, and that sort of.
What does it mean?
Well, I'll tell you what it means. But no, because also before we go into that, you mentioned the House of Wax because Gerald Thomas, the director of all the Carry-Ons, but obviously this one as well. If you run the originator of House of Wax, the Mystery of the Wax Museum, the Fay Ray, Lon Latwell, alongside that scene when he's in the vats, it's almost shot for shot how Lon Latwell does his sort of mad dummies and things. It's literally shot for shot. So Michael Curtiz is been channeled by Gerald Thomas. But Frying Tonight, because don't forget, all these people were sort of war veterans. They'd all sort of fought in some capacity in the Second World War. Tolly Rothwell, you know, born in 1916, so he lived through the war. During rationing in the mid 40s into the late 40s, Friday night here. Because fish was so scarce because of rationing, if your local fish and chippery had cod on that night, they would put a sign out saying "Frying Tonight." So everybody would, oh my God, we can get fish and chips tonight, you know, for a real rare treat. So Frying Tonight was a positive thing.
I'm laughing at the gag now.
So it was basically Kenneth Williams is a human piece of codfish going into the batter. That's what it is.
It's very funny.
But it's as you
catching
say,
up to the movie.
But in the performance of it is so good, isn't it?
He's hilarious. He's just hilarious.
I love it. But okay, talking about the end of films, then we can't not mention Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein. They meet before they really meet in the full film. They meet the Invisible Man, don't they? At the end.
Yeah.
Vincent Price.
Of all people.
What a great cameo. I mean,
well, let's put it this way. We had the guy who played Dracula, we had the guy who played the Wolfman, the guy who played the monster, and now we have the guy who played the Invisible Man in the first sequel.
He had, played with Man Returns. Yeah.
I was going to ask Nick, did any of them not want to do it, or were they all up for it?
Oh no, I think they were all very up for it at this point. This was a big movie at the time, and they were, like Robert said, they were not making big movies.
No.
You know,
But yeah, but I'm sure I read somewhere, or maybe I heard it on the commentary or something, that because Lugosi's agent was desperate to get him the part, because he only played Dracula once prior to that on film. He played it on stage, but he played it in Dracula, the 1930 Browning, and he didn't play it again. He played variations on a theme, Mark of the Vampire and Return of the Vampire and all that.
Return of the Vampire, yeah.
Played Dracula for only the second time, but of course it was John Carradine, wasn't it? It was in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. So
yeah,
was Carradine approached? I don't know if that's
actually this is all apocryphal.
Yeah,
it's all apocryphal. Lugosi was the first one considered.
Was he really?
And Lugosi was signed quickly,
yeah,
a lot more quickly than you think. So this was all. There was a guy named Don Marlowe who was handling Lugosi for a while, and he was a real huckster, a real trickster.
Yeah.
He for a while he was passing himself off as one of the original Our Gang members, Porky or whatever.
Right.
He was a real jerk, and he spread this story to make himself look like the hero.
Right.
Who got Lugosi the part. So no, don't believe it. Don't believe any of it.
So when did he go to Monogram then? Was that 43? Was it around that time, or
even earlier? No, he was there. He was there in 40.
So I'm wondering why no one just laterally thought we'll get Carradine in. I'm of course I'm glad they got Lugosi because he's the only man for the part. But just purely thinking in terms of let's get the guys back who did it the last time.
Well, let's think about Carradine, where he was in 48. He was not making that many movies. If you can think about movies in 1948 and you can think about Carradine, I can't think of any, to be honest. And he was trying to start his own Shakespeare company at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was that interested at this point. He might have even been in New York doing theater.
It didn't last long. Fast track 30 years, he was doing vampire hookers and all sorts of things.
Yes. He was doing anything that was offered.
Exactly, yeah. But fascinating. Yeah,
yeah.
Actually, I just pick up. I'm just looking at your book. I wanted to ask you a question about this. And this
you're the one. Yeah.
Is the difference between these two films is that the chapter in your book starts with the Korean cruise ship. And so the fact that the film translates that they can actually watch it, I don't think, you see, talking about gags, I don't think Carry On would.
What, to Korea?
To Korea.
well, Korean screaming, Korean up the Khyber, Korean. No.
I'm assuming they watched the film in English.
Yes, they did.
And I mean, the quote is here. I'll read it. It says, "Thank you so much. That was so funny. We loved it."
They loved it. They absolutely. You should have heard the laughs. It was amazing. We didn't expect it. My buddy and I, we brought the film ourselves, and we thought it was going to be, maybe polite laughter, maybe silence. It was as if they understood every word.
Wow.
And it wasn't about the words, really. It was about the faces. It was about the desperation.
There's enough in Bud and Lou, and there's enough in Carry On Screaming that you would get
visually.
You would get the sort of the pratfalls, you would get the sort of the stickers on the bum and that sort of thing. There's a lot of sort of pseudo, I wouldn't call it pseudo Benny Hill, but there's universal language of just people falling over and falling into things, and and screaming the sort of the threat of the monsters and that sort of stuff. So I would run that in North Korea quite happily and see what happens. South Korea.
Now, I suppose, Nick, the other thing, just to ask you, I know you want to ask him some questions, but just staying on Carry On for a second. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Oddbod and Oddbod Jr. as the monster?
Okay, I thought, number one, I really liked the design of the monster. I had one issue about showing it too soon.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah,
I would have enjoyed, and again, I'm going back to Abbott and Costello and Frankenstein and the seriousness of the threat. Had we not seen exactly what happened to the young lady, maybe seen just her feet being dragged off, then saved the monster for a reveal later on, I think it would have been more powerful. But the vision, the design of the monster, I absolutely love, and the Junior as well, who was very funny, by the way.
See, but I love Oddbod and Oddbod Junior because for me, mentioning Lugosi and Monogram, they're like something that Lugosi or J.K. Rowling would have thought out in a Monogram film, aren't they?
Yes.
That weird Neanderthal. They're not Frankenstein's monster. They're this weird sort of missing link sort of things, which I sort of love. And they're both Billy Cornelius, who plays Oddbod Junior, and Tom Clegg. They're both sort of wrestlers. They're both.
Oh, are they?
From that boxing world, from the ring sort of world, yeah. And Gerald Thomas does the voice, so that little the Junior voice is the director doing the voice for him. So and his daughter, who was only young at the time, wouldn't go to sleep until Daddy did the monster voice for her. So it's quite. The thing I wanted to ask you as well, which have always fascinated me, and I'm sure in one of your writings you address it, but that moment where talking about the monsters, because there was a point where Tom Clegg, the senior monster, was unwell, so Billy Cornelius doubled for his character.
Oh,
Lon does the same for Glenn Strange in Bud and Leave Frankenstein. He for a split second he's the Frankenstein monster, isn't he? Lon Chaney.
Yes. And you could notice that. You could notice that.
Different sort of. There's more fluidity to Lon's, isn't there? Yeah, it's more.
He's more dangerous. He looks like a footballer. You know.
So what happened? Did Glenn injure himself on the shoot or what?
Apparently, it's like he fractured his ankle, and had to remove the costume, and they were shooting. So Lon stepped up and said, "I'll do it." And it was a lot easier to do because it was Bud Westmore at the makeup chair who had developed a much easier way than Jack Pierce, who started from scratch and took hours and hours. Of course, the results I thought were better with Jack Pierce, but they were able to do this. And you could tell it's Lon Jr. He's the one that actually throws Lenore Arbert out the window, which to me is you talk about the seriousness of the monsters in this movie. That moment, it still shocks. It still shocks.
Horrific. Yeah, it's horrific. Yeah. Even the Wolfman and Dracula sort of going down together that's quite a powerful thing, isn't it? You know,
it really is.
That's I'm getting quite goosebumpy now just thinking about it. It's a proper horror film moment in a comedy situation. Yeah. What I think in although it's a silly carry-on name, Rubber Titi, the mummy,
Rubber Titi,
played by a stunt actor called Dennis Blake. It's still quite scary. It's not played for laughs, and Kenneth Williams actually is genuinely terrified when he's being terrorized by this sort of Egyptian mummy. But
I noticed that it's like a proper finish to a horror film.
A moment, yeah. The villain gets his comeuppance, and it's not played for laughs, apart from the frying tonight bit. But even that's quite disturbing. He's submerged in a vat of boiling whatever it is, wax or whatever. And it's quite scary.
Right. Mm-hmm. I thought what we could do is we could give a pie rating out of 5 for what you thought Carry On Screaming. How many pies would you give it?
Out of 5 pies. That's good, that, yeah.
5, so out of a 5 pie rating?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
5 being the best.
I would give it 3.5 pies.
Oh, any particular flavor pie? That's a thing, though. But
no. It would be a favorite pie of mine. It would be a blueberry pie.
Blueberry pie. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reads well in color.
Hold on. If I Carry On Screaming?
No.
Oh no. You mean if I'm rating Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein out of 5 pies? Oh come on. Come on. It's 5 of the best custard pies going, isn't it? I mean, no. Absolutely. It's. For me, it's one of the actual gems of comedy cinema, regardless of American cinema.
I agree. I have to agree.
One of my always been one of my all-time favorite comedy films. So it's a definite 5 from me.
So thank you everyone for listening. You've been listening to
Nick Santa Maria here, and I just want to thank you both for putting up with me and my American crudeness, and coming from the ugly American. And I want to tell everyone that we expect to do this on a monthly basis. And please suggest films for us to watch and review. American films for my British friend, and British films for your American cousin.
Talking about crude and rude, I was a person that's been talking about Dan for the last so I think I wrote the book on crudeness, and in fact I wrote several books on the crudeness of British comedy. But it's been an absolute delight, and as always, Nick, to chat to you is always a dream, and the hours just melt away because
Same here.
there's nothing I like better than talking about comedy, and you're the person that I like talking about it with most of all. So there you go. So looking forward to the next time. And as Nick said, please get your suggestions in. We will watch anything within reason. I won't watch Police Academy 4 again. Anyway.
No. Gemma, thank you for your contributions. We couldn't do it without you.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you next time. Bye.
Next time.